Being a new mom is hard. We get it.
It's easy to feel alone, but we know that's never how God intended it. So we want to welcome you to the Motherhood.
If you need professional parenting advice, clinically proven data, or study-based evidence, please let us know where to find it. Because here at the Motherhood, we focus on sharing experiences, offering encouragement and understanding, but most importantly, friendship.
We're here to do motherhood together. Hello and welcome back to the Motherhood. If you are new, my name is Riley.
And I'm Bethany.
And today's episode is actually really exciting because we put a question box on Instagram kind of asking, like, what do you guys want to see? What do you want to know? Like, it's a friendship, you know? Like, you don't want one friend to dictate everything you talk about.
No way.
So, we actually received today's topic as a submission to that question box, and it's a good one.
Yeah. And I'm excited, but a little bit nervous to talk about this one.
Same, yes. But I do think it is such a good and relatable episode that if you think that someone else could benefit from it, if you enjoy it, please consider giving it a share. It really supports the podcast. If you're on YouTube, hitting the subscribe button and the notification bell would be phenomenal. Not me plugging ourselves.
No, not at all. But yes, we would greatly appreciate the shares and the support if you feel so led. So as Riley mentioned, this one was a listener submission. And this listener said that she wanted to hear an episode about dealing with big emotions. And in parentheses, she put yours and the child's.
And I love that so much, though, because recently my eyes have been opened to the fact that I don't regulate my emotions as good as I could. I could definitely try harder. And, like, I feel like regulating your child's emotions is a big, like, a trend, I guess, in, like, our generation of parenting. And while I'm so here for that, it's like we're trying to teach our kids things that we don't know how to do ourselves.
Yeah. I think you and I were talking about earlier, like, there's whole Instagram accounts dedicated to this type of stuff and, like, how to work with your child through tantrums and their big emotions and stuff. But, like, where's the Instagram accounts about, like, how to, like, work through the emotions as adults and as parents? And that makes me think of what this specific listener messaged us about as we were kind of talking about the episode. So
I jokingly replied to this person, and I was like, seriously, my biggest challenge in motherhood is currently managing my own emotions. And she said, same. I'm realizing a lot about the things that make me mad or want to lose it are the things that I was not necessarily allowed to get away with or feelings I wasn't allowed to express as a kid. And it makes me sad that childhood me had to suppress it, and then mad that the adult me wants to suppress it in my own child. There needs to be a school for parents.
Welcome to the Motherhood University.
Your school for parents, run by amateurs.
Exactly. And again, we always preface, our intro in every episode is we are not the professionals.
No.
So I think this is what makes me a little bit nervous about this particular episode is because I feel like I don't have a lot of experience and definitely not a lot of good experience in regulating my own emotions. So it makes me a little bit nervous to talk about it because I'm like, I don't even know if I know how to do it. But I think that's what this episode, this podcast, this community is all about, is just a conversation with friends, a conversation with your mom friends, talking about it, processing it, and brainstorming, like, how we can overcome these things.
Like, just, the conversation is going to literally be, like, a conversation Bethany and I would have in the living room with probably a glass of wine in our hands as we talk about how we bombed it that day and help each other overcome it. So
I will say this episode might require several glasses.
This is definitely, and we say it all the time, but we just want to make sure that you guys are very aware. This is not professional advice. I wouldn't even call it advice. This is just literally a mom friend talk where we can just be real with each other and talk about our struggles and what we are doing to try to help ourselves.
And I think we can be guilty. I know, especially like Riley and I, we can be so guilty of just talking about it all the time. Like, hey, I had a bad day, or hey, I lashed out, or hey, I'm feeling guilty, whatever. But like, how often do we like literally have conversations about, okay, so like, how can we not do that next time? Like,
and that's important, right? Because like the whole point of life is like to make mistakes, to learn from those mistakes, and like we're kind of to get better, and like we're kind of doing each other a disservice if Bethany's like, hey, so this happened today, and I'm like, you're a great mom. Don't feel bad about it because you are awesome. Yeah. And again, she is awesome.
Valid true things about me.
Yes,
but
yes. But like, again, I think your job as a friend is to be like, you know what? It's okay that happened. You are a great mom. But if you don't like that, here's a suggestion. Or how can we overcome it? All too often, we just validate each other and then move on. And sometimes the conviction kind of needs to be there, or like, like it can be a growing opportunity. So
it's just like one thing you don't really think about when you think about becoming a mom. Like, you're like, oh, one day I'm gonna have to like help my child and myself regulate their emotions. And for me, I know it's one of the hardest parts about being a parent is like, my kid gets to like sit there and cry and scream when he gets upset, but like I don't get to do that, like I have to be the adult, which I am, but I have to be like the bigger person to be like, okay, control my own emotions and help them walk through like what they're feeling. And again, I just don't really feel like I was like prepared for that in a way. And I know like our listener said, a lot of it she's kind of realizing is like how she grew up and like how her mom taught her about her emotions and how to regulate and all that stuff. So like just goes to also show you how important it is for us to do the same for our kids, because that's going to show them how even into adulthood, how to regulate and control their emotions.
But in all fairness too, like I feel like everybody is also doing the best that they can. So like it's not a bash at the older generations.
Yes.
And the reason that she felt she had to suppress her emotions is because her mother did the same. Who did the same as the mom before her and the mom before her. Like, it's like a long line. And my sister says, know better, do better. And I'm like, I like that quote. Because it's not saying that anyone did anything wrong. It's just like the more society goes on, the more we learn. And with that knowledge, we can change some things that would hopefully make our kids able to be the best humans they can be.
Yeah. So obviously, it's important and very much needed, but I guess maybe let's jump into, do you feel like you have ways of regulating your emotions?
I feel like I have ways, but I don't feel like in the heat of the moment I do a good job at tapping into that arsenal of strategies.
Yeah, and I think it kind of makes me think of the one episode we did about like mental mess and mental stress, where we talk a lot about like overstimulation too. Right. So, and even our self-care episode, just like, I feel like all these kind of intertwine in some way, but I remember in that episode talking about how I need to be better at like seeing the signs of like starting to feel those big emotions and stuff, and like see that sooner and try to help that quicker rather than like it getting to the boiling point and then I'm like freaking out.
It's like you want to extinguish the flame right when it starts, not when it's engulfed everything.
Not when there's a giant forest fire of emotions.
And again, I feel like it's so funny because when I started talking about like spanking and discipline, it's funny because that is where I notice myself not regulating myself. Obviously, this is applicable to so much more than just the anger of feeling like your child isn't listening or behaving or whatever. Yeah. So, actually, before I jump down that rabbit trail, I'm interested to see, like, do you feel like you've done a better job at catching yourself before your emotion, like, peaks? Like, do you think you've seen some success there, or do you still struggle with that, or?
I think maybe a little bit. I think I'm, like, learning to do a little bit more during my day that like helps me have avenues to kind of like release some of that like stress or some of that tension. Like just getting the chance to like work out again and stuff like that kind of helps me to kind of cool down a little bit. And also I feel like I hope I am, but I feel like I'm getting a little bit better at like stopping and thinking like, okay, why am I angry right now?
Right.
Like, this is a silly example, but literally earlier today I was trying to get a workout in, and I'm kind of embarrassed to admit this, but I was at the same time trying to create a reel Because I'm working out on the garage floor and my daughter is like crawling all over me while my son is like driving cars around me. And I was like, this would literally just be like the picture perfect, like real moment, or even just like to capture it on video, you know? But every time I like went to set my camera up to try to record it, my daughter would crawl to my phone because she's obsessed with it and get it. And or they like wouldn't be doing what I was trying to capture.
No, well, that's not the candid thing I had planned.
Mom's trying to create a reel, honey. No, but
Mommy's working.
Yes, but I was getting so frustrated.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, again, like my workout's not getting done and it's taking so much longer than it needs to be. But like in that moment, I like did have time to like stop and think, okay, you're getting angry at your children because you are trying to do way too much right now. You're trying to work out while creating a reel, while like all of the things. And I'm like, I'm doing that to myself in that moment, you know? So I by no means am perfect and can't honestly say if I'm doing better than I was before or not. But that example came to mind. And I do think I'm starting to be able to be like, okay, but like, why? Why are you angry? Yeah. And a lot of the times it's things that I'm doing to my own self. It's not something necessarily my children are doing. It's like what I'm doing to my own self. But I'm like taking that out on my kids.
Right, that's sense. A good point. And, like, also worth mentioning that, like, also don't beat yourself up because, number one, the fact that you have acknowledged this and are working on it, like, that in and of itself is going to be improvement. Yeah. And it's not going to be, like, an overnight fix. Yeah. Like, it's going to take a long time for us to be able to master this. Yeah. We'll never master it. Yeah. We're human. But I feel like all the time we tend to associate big feelings and regulating emotions specifically with our children, specifically anger. Yeah. And this is where I was going a second ago. Yeah. There are so many other avenues, though, where we have to regulate our emotions that we don't even realize we're doing. Yeah. Like, think about, like, I mean, even, like, excitement, Like, think about a little kid when they're excited, they're jumping and they're bouncing and they're doing all the things, and it's like, as adults, okay, sometimes we still do that, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, as a general rule, like, you learn to even how you can acceptably, like, show that. Yeah, and, like, worry, stress. Like, there are so many different emotions. I think all too often we just think anger. Yeah. And that's the big one, I would say, especially because anger tends to have a negative connotation, and, like, nobody is concerned with, like, I guess their cup being overflowed with happiness, that overflows onto their kid. Yeah. It's just anger. Anger's the one we worry about, Yeah.
But I mean, it's so true. Like, and I think, again, because I think when you think of regulating emotions, a lot of times we're thinking about like our children's, and a lot of times the big emotions that our children are feeling are often anger and frustration. And that's when it also makes us feel anger and frustration. But I think we can, like, I think sometimes we do, like you said, need to stop and think, okay, but also like emotions like worry, like those aren't good things to be overwhelmed with either. Anger, frustration, worry, I'm blanking on some of the others, but there's lots of other emotions that I think we need to be, check ourselves and think, am I regulating that as well? And all this to say, I feel like it needs to be said that, like, emotions aren't bad things. Oh, no, right. Like, obviously, we were created with emotions for a purpose and for a reason. And for a reason, but, so, like, to feel these things isn't bad. It's not bad, and we don't need to feel guilty for, like, feeling angry or feeling worried, but I think it's like how we respond to those emotions, and like not just like sulking and sitting in the anger and sulking and sitting in the worry. Like, it's like how we respond to those that I think can be the downfall of it.
No, and it's important to show emotion, right? Yeah. Like, it's great for your child to see you, I mean, not to be like a jerk, but to see you crying. Yeah. And you to say like, Mommy's just really sad right now because this happened. Yeah. Or maybe you can't tell them why it happened, but maybe you're just like, Mommy's just feeling sad. Yeah. It's really good for them to see, oh, this is sadness, and then they can relate to it. And like, so it's not only a good thing to have emotions, but it's important to process them and for your child to see you work through them. But with that being said, they are watching everything. Yeah. So how can we handle all of our emotions in a I don't say a positive, because I mean, some are negative.
Yeah.
How can we turn it into a positive learning experience?
Yeah.
How can we
or like a teaching moment
productively show them and not
yeah.
in like a harmful way or a way where we teach the wrong things, essentially.
Yeah. And while you were talking about that, it kind of like made me think of, again, like I know I can think of multiple Instagram accounts right now that come to mind about, you know, like regulating emotions, your emotions, children's emotions. And I feel like I used to, and honestly, quite honestly, sometimes still, like roll my eyes when I see their posts and stuff, because it's like, okay, stop, mommy's gonna take a deep breath. I know you're feeling big feelings. Wow, like you're sad, angry. Oh, I'm so sad you're angry. Like, you know, and I'm just like, okay, but like when you're in that moment, like how do you stop and just be like, okay, when I also have the dog barking and, you know, the other kids screaming.
You're overstimulated, and it just doesn't feel practical.
Exactly. That's like what I was trying to say is like, I feel like I roll my eyes because I'm like, okay, but like, is that practical? Or like sometimes like my child is just like yelling and screaming, and like to sit there and be like, oh, big feelings, you know?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that that is a bad thing, but that's just, I feel like how I often respond to those, because I'm like, it just doesn't seem practical. It doesn't feel possible for me, I guess is why I kind of get upset, because I'm like, I don't think I'll ever be that person. I don't think I can ever like regulate my own emotions in that way.
But it's also fair to be like, because they do it that way doesn't mean that's the only way.
Yes.
You know?
Yes,
and so that's another thing is like, again, I'm preaching to myself here, hypocrite Riley coming out, but like, also try to use those as suggestions, not as like, this is the way to do it.
Very
because
good point.
That's different for people, you know? And I mean, each child is different, and they might need a different response. And this is not what I should say right now, because it's not exactly needed to further the conversation, but it's funny. My favorite are like when people take those and make like satire parodies about it. Like there was one where it's like, instead of telling your daughter no, I'm gonna say, do it 2 more times. And the lady
while your kid's like punching another kid or something.
She's like, whack your sister 2 more times. All right, now 1 more.
Yeah, and then there is kind of like this like satire culture out there around. And I know, like, I feel like even I talk to like the older generations, and I feel like they even kind of roll their eyes about like, and again, it's kind of that like know better, do better thing. But I feel like there is kind of like the gap in generations of like how to handle emotions and stuff. This is a rabbit trail, but...
No, we're going to go down it because it's good.
Hop, hop.
I do think, though, that there's, like, a side of the older generation where it's, like, on the one hand, I get you, I feel you. Like, the whole gentle parenting thing, I feel like, again, I don't think I'm going to be a gentle parent. I don't think I'm going to be a harsh parent. I think I'm going to be me. And I think I'm going to do things my way, and I don't think I fit either mold and can label it either way. Mm-hmm. But... I do think that that's like that some people see it and they're like, snowflakes. Yeah. And then there's the other side that sees it and they're like, okay, like I see where you're going with this, but like you have to assert yourself. You have to be the parent. You have to come in and like I feel like they're both wrong. Yeah. Like, I don't want to say wrong. It's an opinion. You can't really be wrong in your opinion. Yeah. But, like, I think some people just take offense to that. Yeah. Kind of like, well, we screwed these kids up so bad that they're having to make this new form of parenting. Yeah. And it's not that either. You know? Like, it's literally just, like, trying something new. And so I don't want this episode to be offensive to anybody either, because I think there are generations of phenomenal parents before us.
Oh, I agree.
But... it is something that is just #trending.
Yeah, again, it's like, okay, well, let's talk about it. Like, let's see, like, does it, I mean, I feel like I know it does make a difference, but, like, what else can we try that might be different that could also be, like, a teaching moment or whatever for them? So I know we kind of talked about, like, a few ways that we can actually try, and again, I think now we're kind of specifically talking about our emotions as, like, moms and parents, but how we can regulate our emotions. And I think, again, it kind of can circle back to like our self-care episode. I think one thing, just like taking time for yourself so that you're not like constantly feeling overwhelmed or angry or frustrated or even worried, and, you know, like having that time to just like really focus on yourself. I know that is a big way that we can help to like regulate ourselves.
And before we jump into ways that we can regulate ourselves, our emotions, all the things, This is where I want to just be very transparent, where it's like we said earlier, we are not professionals.
Yes.
We have sat here and like tried to think of our own ways, and we were like, you know what? We're going to need one of our good Google searches because honestly, we need help too. So this is not being like, I, Riley, have tried the following and had great success. Like, these are things that we are going to learn with you and then implement ourselves. So this is not tried and true. This is literally us trying to better ourselves as mothers and hopefully helping some others in the process.
Yeah. I feel like these episodes are always us just like actually doing the research for ourselves and like, hey, let's talk about it on a podcast.
We're basically learning publicly.
Exactly. So yeah, I think just like self-care, time to ourselves, time to rejuvenate and regenerate, that can definitely help like for us to not get to that point where we're overwhelming and our emotions are bigger than even we can handle or control.
But it's also kind of hard because, like, you hear about the cliche, like, because that one's great, but it's not going to be, like, in the heat of the moment, you're like, hey, Archer, Mommy needs a face mask. Mommy needs a face mask. So
great. I'm sorry, could you hold your big emotion for just a minute? I need to go put on my clay mask, son. Yeah.
Once I'm masked up, I'm going to be able to process this. So, like, again, being able to step away, huge. I'm really glad that the person who wrote the article that we are getting this from, I'm really glad that she included that because it is really a great way to recharge and to kind of like relax and just kind of like come back to center with yourself. But like I feel like the cliche ones you hear all the time are like count to 10, take a deep breath, walk away.
Yeah. Well, it helps you just to, again, you're not like acting in like that feeling, you know, you're like, okay, like give me a second just to like cool down and I'm going to respond in like a calm manner. You're not like acting in that frustration right away. Cause I know I've had to do that with Archer before too. And it's like, I can come back out there and be like, okay, rather than in that moment, just like yelling in his face, you know, I can come back and be okay.
The younger they are, the harder it is too, because I can't have a conversation with Indy of, okay, Mommy needs a minute to breathe. I'm going to lay you down and come right back. And even though I did tell her like I would say something about Mommy will be right back. And then like I literally walked out, came back in. But like I said that, but it's mainly for me because she doesn't know what that means. And so I do think it's exceptionally harder in the beginning because they don't have the understanding, you know? And like specifically with like, when you have like a 5-year-old, you can even say like, hey, Mommy realized that she did this and that probably made you feel this way. Yeah. And I'm very sorry for that, and I just want you to know that that wasn't okay, and I'm sorry, or whatever. You can't do that with a toddler. They can't process that. Yeah. So I feel like it's especially hard in the season of, like, toddler years. Yeah. When they're learning so much crucial information, but they don't have that ability to understand.
Yeah. Because I was going to say, even Archer, he's almost 2.5, and I don't think... Like, I feel like he understands, like, oh, like, I'm going to step away, I'll be right back. But, like, I don't think he can quite comprehend. And maybe I'm not giving him enough credit. I don't know. But, like, I don't think he can quite comprehend me being like, Mommy needs a minute. Like, I'm going to step over here and come back. I don't know. But, yeah, it's difficult because it's not like you can sit there and reason with another adult. It's a toddler.
Right.
But that kind of made me think of, like, being able to step away. I think another way that we can kind of like help to regulate our emotions is like kind of like how I mentioned earlier is like asking yourself, okay, like why am I really upset right now? Like when Archer's screaming and again the dog's barking, whatever, the TV's on, like I'm upset because there's like just so much happening, or I'm upset because I'm out of control. Right. And so like that's not a reflection of my son. So like why would I, you know, act or respond in a manner that is, like, directed towards him, you know? So, like, asking yourself in that moment, which, again, I know can be a hard thing when you're, like, frustrated. You're not going to be like, all right, why am I really upset? But, you know, like, for my example earlier, working out, I was like, okay, I know right now that I'm upset because I'm putting too much on my own plate and trying to do too many things at once. So I think, like, stopping to ask ourselves, why am I really feeling this emotion? And is that connected to like my child, or like, is it connected to something else, whatever? And maybe how can I then fix whatever is making me feel this way?
And that's also a really good point too, because I feel like that's also something that you can then teach your child.
Yeah.
So, for example, I feel like a lot of the time when our kids are acting some type of way, it's not what it looks like
that
has them doing the outburst.
Yeah.
So if you can teach Archer, like to calmly be like, okay, catch your breath.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Why are you upset?
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I saw this example online where it's like this child was like crying and crying and crying and mad or whatever, and finally the mom says, or the child says something about like, Daddy washed my hair and I wanted you.
Oh, yeah.
And so the whole bath time was like a meltdown, all because of that one little instance. And she says, you know what? I get it.
Yeah.
You wanted mommy to do it and daddy had to do it. And I'm sorry, but sometimes mommy's just busy and she can't do it. But I understand why you're mad, and that's okay to be upset. And then she was able to then acknowledge that feeling and then totally fix the problem because she acknowledged that feeling, and then she distracted the kid with something else, and it was fine.
And she, like, actually found out why the kid was
the
upset.
root cause.
Yeah. And I love, again, like, sidetrack for that, but, like, I always read and see on Instagram, like, making sure your child knows, like, that feeling is okay, and feelings are okay. Mm-hmm. And I think we need to do the same for ourselves, is, like, telling ourselves, okay, like, it's okay to feel angry, it's okay to feel that feeling or whatever, and I think often enough we don't, like, we're like, we get angry because we're feeling angry,
right.
And, like, again, I think it's okay to tell ourselves, it's okay for me to feel this feeling right now, but, like, I'm not going to respond in
this way.
Yeah. Like, and that makes me think of another thing I was reading is someone recommended, like, setting yourself boundaries for whenever you, like, get those big feelings. So, like, in your head being like, okay, I'm feeling this way, but I am not going to respond with harmful words, or I am not going to, like, respond with a spanking in this moment, or I'm not going to, like, respond by shouting. Like, setting yourself boundaries, I think that would be one thing that would be super helpful for me, is, like, just to tell myself, like, okay, Bethany, I know you're feeling this way, but you are not going to respond in this way.
And, like, I think a good, like, example of a boundary would be, like, let's say, I'm going to use yelling because it's the first thing to pop into mind. Let's say Archer is like, no! And I'm saying Archer because he's 2, okay?
He's full-blown big
Indy
emotions.
is going to do this too. I just don't have experience with her yet. But, like, let's say Archer is, like, yelling no at you.
Yeah.
Then you can say, Archer, you cannot talk to mommy like that.
Yeah.
That is not kind, and mommy doesn't want to talk to you like that.
Yeah.
So to keep this from, this sounds too grown up.
No.
Make it fit for a child. But, be like, to keep me from having my own big feelings.
Yeah.
When you are ready to talk at this level, then mommy can help you, but right now you're not letting mommy help you. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know how you would word that exactly. I'm kind of, like, on the spot word vomiting here.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, setting that boundary with yourself, like, even to set the boundary is you can't yell at mommy.
Yeah. But you're also setting that boundary for your child, too, which I think is so, so great. And I love that you're saying that because, like, again, goes back to, like, us learning to regulate our emotions while at the same time teaching them to do that. So if you're setting boundaries for yourself, like, I've read that children love boundaries and they thrive on boundaries and they need that boundary. So, like, set the boundary for yourself, and then again in turn, like, set the boundary for your child. Like you said, I'm not going to yell at you, and that's my boundary, and your boundary is that you're not going to yell at me either.
Right.
I'm already learning so much. I'm going to regulate my emotions so well tomorrow.
I think another thing that I don't, again, because Indy has not, I mean, we are just entering toddlerhood. It's coming, and I know that. But I think another thing that could be really helpful for a lot of people is to just really be in tune with your partner. And, when, and I know that when you're home alone, obviously this doesn't apply. But, like, when you're home together, if, Josh knows you. So if he can see you starting to get frazzled, partner step in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, pass the baton, tap out, do whatever you need to do. You go cool yourself down, and then hopefully your partner you guys are in such a good partnership that they can pick up where you left off and kind of, like, back you up as far as what you were doing and what's, like, maybe your boundary or whatever, but let you go away so that the problem is still being resolved, but just with fresh patience and new ears, new eyes.
Yeah. And keep saying I love that, but I love that you said that, because I think a lot of times I think of the times during the day when I'm home alone with the children and I'm like not always thinking about, when Josh is here too. But yes, definitely using like help. Like, and I think Josh does an incredible job at like starting to see when I'm getting overwhelmed, and he's like, okay, like step in, like Archer, hey, like let me play with you, let's wrestle, whatever. Or I know I've had times where I'm like, Josh, I can't, like I need you to change this diaper because he's kicking me in the face.
No, and I'm so glad you said that, because sometimes the solution is not the conversation. Sometimes the solution is the distraction.
Yeah.
Let's go beat each other up on the floor, like.
Yeah.
Or even just like, because he's kicking you when you change him, that doesn't mean that he doesn't like you or he wants to hurt you. It's just literally he doesn't want his diaper changed. But guess what? Sometimes we just do those things because we have to.
Yeah. I know. No, I'm not going to get on a tangent of diaper changes right now. But that also makes me think of another way, which I know is like talking about like using our partner, like leveraging that help. I know it's helpful just to have like friends you can turn to and to like talk about these things again, like we're doing now. But like, I think that also ties into another way, which is like having, like giving yourself perspective. But I know so many times I have like voice messaged you or texted you and just been like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm crying because I just yelled at Archer and then I'm feeling guilty, and like you have always given me a different perspective of it. And I think especially when you're like feeling those big emotions, it's so helpful to like stop and have a different perspective. And I feel like one of the ways you can get that is by reaching out to a friend or asking someone, or just like sharing in your emotions and having people like process those with you, again, like we're doing right now.
And even to say, like, you know what? You are a good mom.
Yeah.
And was that the best way to handle it? I think we can agree. No.
Yeah.
But that doesn't make you a bad mom.
Yeah.
Your child has honestly probably forgotten about it. They're probably not in there dwelling over it like, Mommy did this, But that also leads me to say that just because we have strategies in place and we try to regulate our own emotions, we're not going to succeed every time.
Yeah.
We're going to fall short so often, and we're going to feel so much guilt about it, which shows that you care.
Yeah.
So try to give yourself grace. But I also want to mention, though, that when we fall short, that's another great learning opportunity, because the older he gets, the more he's going to click with this.
Yeah.
But to learn, hey, mommy messes up too, and we're all still human, and at the end of the day, if I do something wrong, or I don't say wrong, but if if something happens, you can always go back and be like, hey, I'm sorry. I realized that I didn't do this the way that I could, the way that I should. And that, number one, teaches him how to correctly solve it.
Yeah.
But number two, shows them how to right a wrong. You know what I mean? Like, it's like a double lesson.
Yeah. We love the lessons. And when I was thinking about this earlier and just like trying to think of ways again to like actually regulate my own emotions, I did think of one thing that I hadn't really thought of before, but just circling back to how like emotions aren't bad things, like they're good things. Again, we were created with emotions for a reason, but I think another thing that might help me personally is just like in that moment, even if it is anger or worry or fear, whatever it is, even to just like stop and thank God for that emotion. Like, God, thank you for like giving me these emotions. Like, even if it's fear, like he gives us fear for a reason, like, even though we don't have anything to fear with the Lord, but like, again, he's given us each one of these for a reason, and it's all a reflection of him and his character. So like, I think it would help me to like, even in that moment where I'm feeling like I'm about to yell at Archer, to be like, God, thank you for anger. And I just wonder if we like shifted our mindset from that emotion to like an emotion or feeling of gratitude. I feel like that could like shifting from that anger to gratitude, I feel like would just do something with your brain,
Right, like release some kind of new hormones, chemicals, whatever.
Exactly.
But it feels so weird because it's like, how can you be thankful for anger? Like, but it's not necessarily like the anger that you're thankful for, but it's like more like how our emotions work together to like
Yeah. I know. It's kind of like a brain thing. But like and you and I were talking about this earlier. Like we were like, wait, is anger a good thing? Like, is anger okay? But like, to get biblical, like we see Jesus, like he gets angry in the temple in the Bible and he's like flipping chairs and stuff. Not to say that we should go and do that, but like
the emotion isn't bad.
Yeah.
It's almost like the way we respond is where the problem is. Like, it's not bad to be angry.
Exactly. And I think, you look at the world today and you see the things that are happening, even to like people, innocent people, like that anger is not a bad thing. And again, I think like God gives us that emotion for a reason. I think anger, when done right, quote unquote, like spurs action, like then you go and like help those people. Like, so again, I don't think anger, the emotion itself, is a bad thing, but like again, if you're responding in a bad way, that's when it becomes an issue. So I think
I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Same thing with parenting.
Yeah.
Like when you get angry, it's because your child is probably being disrespectful or not being obedient, and that is a good thing for them to learn. It is good to be respectful. It is good to obey, but it's the way we teach it where anger can be beneficial because it shows you, we don't like this. This is a lesson we need to learn.
Yeah.
But we don't want it to be toxic, where it's like you end up yelling or unnecessarily like spanking or doing things that you wouldn't do if that anger wasn't fueling the fire.
Yeah.
That's good.
So maybe it's not necessarily like, God, thank you for anger, but like, God, thank you for emotions. Like, thank you for making me the way that you made me. And again, I just think that if we switched those feelings to gratitude, that would just do something better for our souls. So I'm going to try to implement that one a little bit more.
Have an attitude of gratitude.
Attitude of gratitude.
Which is not mine. I stole from Carol Ann on TikTok. But I like that.
Yeah.
Attitude of gratitude. I was like, that's such short, sweet little...
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah. And I think we talked about it in another episode, but just how like gratitude like literally does something to your brain's biology. So I'm like, maybe we can try that emotion and that big. Let's be like big grateful. Big thankful. Big grateful.
Is it a big energy?
# big grateful.
But this will be like the last strategy that I personally share because I don't want to just like beat a dead horse and just like
try this, and this.
On
Here
this
are all your
5-hour
options.
episode.
Yeah.
I don't know why I always say this last. I would love to say it's because I want to have a hard hitter at the end, but it's not. It just literally takes me the entire podcast to think of this, and I hate it. I do, because when you hear what it is, you're going to be like, that should be your number one. But going back to the Lord, in that moment, stop, and even just send up a little prayer. Even if it's like, Lord, please don't let me strangle this baby today, But every time I go to Him, and sometimes it makes me angry because sometimes, like, unrelated to children, sometimes when I get frustrated, like with Connor, and I'm like, okay, we're going to go to God about it. And God's going to side with me, and it's going to be great. But I pray, and it's like I feel God being like, serve Him.
Yeah.
What do you mean serve Him?
Come on, Jesus.
And so, but it's like, even if I don't want to do it, and even if I'm serving with not the happiest of hearts, the anger is diffusing. Yeah. And the situation is improving. It does
something to you.
And I just think that every time we go to Him, He comforts us, which kind of reminds me, like, when your child comes to you with a big emotion, you help them regulate it. If we go to God with our big emotions, He helps us regulate it.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's in a way that we didn't think we ever would or could.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was super good too, because, like, again, the answer to everything is going to Jesus.
Yeah.
But I don't go to Jesus,
And it, again, like, I mean, always easier said than done. It should be our first response is to, like, take it to Him.
That's what I'm saying. Why is this my last suggestion?
Well, it all kind of wraps up in the end. This is, like, I guess the big takeaway, if there are takeaways. But yeah, again, it's like, just like our children, when Archer bumps his head, he runs to me and I try to calm him down and take care of him. Like, we as children need to run to our Father to, like, help us to regulate those emotions too.
Amen.
So, and I think we can end on that note. I'm just kidding.
Bye.
And mic drop. But yeah, so I think we were able to come up with some things and maybe some ways where we can, like, start to try and regulate our own emotions. And I think even in those things, like, when we learn to implement that in our own lives, like, we can then try to implement that into our children's lives too. So I think it all just kind of flows from like, let's try to do this ourselves, and then, that way we can then help our children to do the same.
And they are always watching. Yeah. So by watching you handle things the way that you do, and by you simply apologizing to them and explaining when you do something, I don't even want to say wrong, I just want to say the way that you the way that you don't necessarily want to do it.
Yeah.
Then they're also going to learn from that too. So it's like they are always watching us, which is like, number one, terrible, because think about how much we like
scary.
Don't necessarily want them to pick up on.
Yeah.
But also how beautiful that is.
Yeah.
Because like, it's just like, I remember one day you told me that Archer came up to you or whatever, and like, I believe he got like your phone charger and went to put one in your phone and one in the wall.
Yeah.
And you're like, where do you even like, first of all, don't go near that outlet. But like, it's like, how do they even know this? But like, they watch so much.
Which again makes me think of like, what if we were just always watching the Lord? Like, what if we were just keeping our eyes on the Lord?
And just keep the convictions
coming. I know, like, or just what if we were always in the Word and reading our Bible? Like, that's where we can like see God and like watch Him and literally like watch His life and how He lived His life. So like, again, just like our children do that with us, like, what if we were doing that with the Lord? I'm so glad we're having this conversation.
I know. We were so worried to hit record today because I was like, I don't feel like I have anything.
We're like, I don't know how to regulate my emotions.
And this is why the conversations need to happen. Yeah. Because had we not started the conversation, we wouldn't have come up with the things that we came up with, Yeah. And maybe we're just saying a lot of things that you've heard and know to do, but we didn't know.
But I mean, can you, like, sometimes it takes like hearing things multiple times, right? Scrolling past that same post on Instagram multiple times. But I hope that there is as much in this episode as there was for us. And as we mentioned briefly earlier, if there is a lot for you in this episode too, make sure you subscribe, like, and always we would appreciate a share.
And to officially join the Motherhood, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at @themotherhood_moms, where you can participate in some of our polls, you can comment on our posts and kind of share your opinions or the ways that you cope. If you have any suggestions that we didn't think of or get to. So Instagram is really where we do most of our interacting and where you guys get to talk back.
Yeah, and who knows, we could be talking about your question or your submission next, which we would love to do. So make sure you interact with us. Give us a follow if you're not already. And again, we hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope here's to like regulating our emotions this week.
With that being said, I'm probably going to yell and cry tomorrow.
I know. The Lord's going to test us all tomorrow. I'm just waiting for it. He's like, oh, we're going to put all of these little steps into place. Oh, we better hold on to our horses. All right. I think we should end this while we're at it.
Sounds great.
We'll see you guys next week.
Bye. Thanks for taking the time out of your busy day to listen to us, friend. If you felt encouraged by what you heard, please consider giving us a review wherever you listen to your podcast. Unless you hated it, because like your mom always said, if you don't have anything nice to say, you don't say anything at all.
And to officially join the Motherhood, follow us on Instagram at @themotherhood_moms. We always have ways to interact and we want to hear from you. Have a great week.